2013. Jeffrey Epstein typed an email to the former Prime Minister of Israel. In that email, Epstein told him the Middle East was falling apart and suggested it was the perfect opportunity for both of them. The former Prime Minister agreed. 2 months later, the two men were quietly arranging a private meeting with Vladimir Putin. No government knew about it, no press covered it. So who exactly was Jeffrey Epstein to the Prime Minister of Israel? New York City, 1974. Jeffrey Epstein was 21 years old when he talked his way into a teaching job at the Dalton School, one of the most exclusive private schools in Manhattan. He had no college degree. By any normal standard, he should not have been in that building. He was charming, he was sharp, and he seemed to understand early on that the most valuable thing in the world was not money. It was access to the right people. By 1976, he was working at Bear Stearns, one of the most powerful investment banks on Wall Street. Again, no degree. He simply walked through doors that should have been closed to him. Then, in 1981, something stranger happened. Epstein appeared in internal records connected to a meeting at the Pentagon. Defense contractors were present. What capacity Epstein attended in, nobody has ever explained. He left Bear Stearns shortly after and announced he was starting his own financial management firm. He said he only worked with clients worth over $1 billion. But journalists who tried to find those clients found almost nothing. One reporter tracked down the address of his firm, a Manhattan office building. No sign on the door, no receptionist, no visible staff. London, November 5th, 1991. To understand what Epstein would become, you have to understand a man named Robert Maxwell. Maxwell was a British media tycoon worth billions. He owned over 400 companies. He served 2 terms as a member of parliament. He was born in Czechoslovakia to a Jewish family, escaped the Nazis as a teenager, and reinvented himself in Britain as a publishing empire. He was also a man with extraordinary connections to governments, intelligence services, and heads of state across multiple continents. On November 5th, 1991, Maxwell's body was found floating in the Atlantic Ocean near the Canary Islands. He had apparently fallen from his private yacht, a vessel named the Lady Ghislaine after his youngest daughter. The official conclusion was accidental death. Some investigators suggested suicide. Others pointed to the bruises on his body, the fact that no crew member heard a splash, and that the body was found nearly 100 miles from where the yacht had been anchored. His funeral was held in Jerusalem. Israeli intelligence figures attended. Then, Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir personally delivered the eulogy and said, "He has done more for Israel than can be said today." After Maxwell died, it was discovered that over $1 billion had vanished from his company's employee pension funds. A 2022 BBC documentary series established that Epstein had helped Maxwell move and hide significant assets in offshore accounts during the final years of Maxwell's life, as his empire was quietly collapsing. The point is, who introduced Epstein to Robert Maxwell in the first place has never been established. New York City, 1990s. Epstein had built something unusual. He had a Manhattan townhouse that was reportedly the largest private residence in the city. He had a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He had a private jet. He had a ranch in New Mexico. And he had, by all appearances, almost no legitimate business that could explain any of it. The one verifiable major financial relationship involved Les Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret and one of the wealthiest men in America. Wexner signed over a legal power of attorney to Epstein, giving him authority over his finances and assets. Wexner later said he had been deceived. He never fully explained how the relationship began or ended. What Epstein had was a contact list, and that list ran from Hollywood to Washington, from London to Tel Aviv, from Moscow to Beijing. He hosted dinners, he arranged introductions, he connected people who needed to be in the same room without anyone knowing why. He was, in the clearest sense, a fixer. November 2025. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act with bipartisan support. Trump signed it immediately. The law required the Department of Justice to release all files related to its investigations into Epstein and Maxwell. The first batch arrived in December 2025. It was met with bipartisan outrage. Over 500 pages were completely blacked out. Entire documents, including a 119-page grand jury transcript, were unreadable. And then something strange happened. Members of the public discovered that the blacked-out text in the digital files could be revealed simply by copying and pasting it into another application. The redaction had been done improperly. Information the government had tried to hide became readable to anyone with a laptop. On January 30th, 2026, the DOJ released a much larger batch. More than 3 million pages, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images. It was the biggest single disclosure in the history of the case, but lawmakers noted that the DOJ had identified over 6 million potentially relevant pages. Only half had been released. The question hung in the air. What was in the other half? December 19th, 2025. Among the released materials were photographs: Clinton posing with Epstein and Maxwell, Clinton with Kevin Spacey, with Mick Jagger, with Michael Jackson, Clinton sitting in a pool next to a person whose face was redacted. A DOJ official later described that person as a victim of Epstein's sexual abuse. Clinton's team pushed back. His deputy chief of staff issued a statement. They can release as many grainy 20-plus-year-old photos as they want, but this isn't about Bill Clinton. Never has been, never will be. August 2025. The House Oversight Committee issued subpoenas to 10 individuals, including both Bill and Hillary Clinton. The vote to approve those subpoenas had been unanimous across party lines. What followed was 6 months of delays. Clinton's deposition was first scheduled for October 2025. It was pushed to December. He declined, citing a funeral. The committee offered to reschedule for January. He declined again. A new subpoena set the date for January 13, 2026. He did not show up. On January 21st, the Oversight Committee voted to recommend holding both Clintons in contempt of Congress, and here was the moment that mattered. 9 Democrats on the committee voted against their own party's former president. 3 Democrats also voted to hold Hillary Clinton in contempt. This was not a partisan stunt. Members of Clinton's own political family were saying he needed to answer. It was only when it became clear that the full House was prepared to vote on contempt with possible criminal consequences that the Clintons finally agreed to appear. The deadline had arrived and there was no more room to maneuver. Palm Beach, Florida. In 2006, federal investigators in Florida began building a case against Epstein related to the abuse of underage girls. The case involved dozens of victims. The evidence, according to prosecutors involved at the time, was extensive. In 2008, a deal was signed. Epstein pleaded guilty to a single state charge. He served 13 months. He was allowed to leave the facility 6 days a week for work release. His co-conspirators, whoever they were, received immunity as part of the agreement. That immunity clause was unusual. Legal experts who reviewed the deal later noted it was almost never seen in cases of this kind. Alexander Acosta, the federal prosecutor who signed off on the agreement, was asked about it years later. He reportedly told a colleague that he had been informed from above that Epstein belonged to intelligence and had been told to leave it alone. Acosta did not publicly clarify which intelligence service he was referring to. Los Angeles, California, December 2025. The FBI's Los Angeles field office produced an internal memo. It was based on information from a confidential human source, someone inside Epstein's world who had agreed to talk. According to the source, Epstein's longtime attorney, Alan Dershowitz, had told the federal prosecutor Acosta that Epstein belonged to both U.S. and allied intelligence services. The source claimed to have listened in on phone calls between Dershowitz and Epstein and taken notes. After those calls, the source said, Israeli intelligence would contact Dershowitz directly for a debrief. The memo concluded that the source had become convinced Epstein was, in the Bureau's language, a co-opted Mossad agent, meaning someone brought into the orbit of Israeli intelligence and used, whether or not they held an official role. Dershowitz denied every part of it. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted publicly that Epstein's closeness to Barak proved nothing about Israeli involvement. Ghislaine Maxwell, in a conversation with Justice Department officials in 2025, said she did not believe Epstein was a paid Israeli intelligence agent. She did not say there was no connection at all. Jeffrey Epstein was not a spy in the way movies describe spies. There was no handler handing him an envelope in a parking garage, no mission briefing, no official file with his name on it, at least none that has been made public. What he had was something more practical. He knew who needed what. He knew who was afraid of what. He sold access, for decades, to governments, to intelligence services, to billionaires, to former heads of state. And the deals he arranged, in Mongolia, in rooms across Europe and Africa and Central Asia, those deals had consequences that outlasted him. The question was never really whether he worked for a specific country. The more uncomfortable question is simpler. How does a man with no official role end up in the middle of decisions that shape the security architecture of multiple nations, and then die in a federal cell before anyone can ask him directly?